really thought of episode 6 as the turning point, and because of that, a crucial episode to get right.
It was an exciting episode for us to work on. It was also a really challenging episode.
It's where everyone sort of reveals their intentions and starts to own up to their potential.
Episode 6 is really where the roller coaster hits the top of the hill and starts speeding downhill.
He will arrive within the fortnight or be branded an enemy of the crown.
It's one of our favorites, and we're glad it was chosen for Anatomy of an Episode.
There was a different opening to episode 6 originally, which was sort of a cold open. And episode 6 was originally going to begin with this massacre of the Riverlands. And for a number of reasons, we removed that because it didn't involve any of our principles and it was a very elaborate sequence. And I feel like what we were left with was something really strong because it's almost a direct follow-up to the previous episode where Ned Stark is attacked by Jaime Lannister as he leaves Littlefinger's brothel. And he wakes up and he's kind of groggy, and I felt it would be a good idea to shoot it from his point of view, because he would have been on opiates, he would have been groggy, and he kind of wakes up to find Cersei and the king standing in front of him.
And he wakes and we're very much in his mind, and the world is kind of out of focus. He's suffering kind of physically and mentally, trying to get through this kind of hornet's nest, this mess of treachery.
Pardon your grace. I would rise, but...
Do you know what your wife has done?
She did nothing I did not command.
Who'd have thought she had it in her?
By what right dare you lay hands on my blood?
I am the king's hand.
You were the king's hand.
Peace and
You shall now be held accountable.
Oh, will both of you shut your mouths?
She has the intention of really controlling things in the kingdom and wants Ned out of her hair.
She's smart and political, so she knows that Ned's a threat, especially when he gets close to Robert and he finds out certain things about her that she obviously can't afford to let him make public. I took you for a king.
Hold your tongue.
He's attacked one of my brothers and abducted the other. I should wear the armor and you the gown.
The Robert that Ned grew up with and was raised with and went to war for in the past is not a Robert who would have ever hit his wife, no matter what the provocation. It's actually kind of a really good indicator for Ned, I think, of just how far his friend has fallen and how different the Robert we know on the show is from the Robert that Ned grew up with.
See what she does to me, my loving wife.
We had a simple idea that Mark Addy, who plays the king, would sit at the end of the bed, and he's sort of in this reflective, he's just battered his wife, his kingdom's going to hell, and his best friend is sort of not really backing him up. And Mark and I just came up with this really simple thing of sitting at the end of the bed and having a drink, and then in the end he decides that he's going to go hunting and sort of shirk his responsibilities as king and put it all on Ned.
And what about Jaime Lannister? What about Jaime? I'm half a kingdom in debt to his bloody father. I don't know what happened between you and those yellow-haired shits. I don't want to know. This is what matters. I can't rule the kingdoms if the Starks and the Lannisters are at each other's throats, so enough.
This sort of
imperative that we found an image for the hand. And we've also got it actually up on a window up over the doorway. A lot of the design process is, you know, I have an idea, I talk to whoever in my team, whoever's the right sort of person, and it sort of can be photos, drawings, scribbles, bits and bobs, and we can then, you know, we work things out. And in that case, it was images, and then we draw a hand, and it looked too graphic, then it looked too modern, and it didn't look modern enough. And, you know, you keep moving things around. And then, in fact, what was interesting was we did the hand, and then we printed it out on the floor with marble paper and everything. And then actually, it did have to have some more work done. And I had another artist here at the time who was a much more of a free hand, and he made it much more the hand you see now.
The hunt. Killing things clears my head. You'll have to sit on the throne while I'm away. You'll hate it more than I do. Targaryen girl. 7 hells. Don't start with her again. The girl will die, and I'll hear no more of it. Put on the bench. And if you ever take it off again, I swear to the mother I'll pin the damn thing on Jaime Lannister.
And we immediately cut to Daenerys. And Daenerys is in this sort of altered state. Michelle Clapton, our costume designer, made a conscious decision to put her in one of her Westeros costumes, which was, you know, this sort of orange robe, which sort of has like a dragon motif on it. The idea being that Daenerys is getting back in touch with her heritage and the Targaryen in her. The sort of fire itself was simply rendered with plexiglass and light and sort of these burned embers of wood.
We could have done it as a stunt, but then it's not her doing it, so it was quite important it was her doing it. So what we're doing for that is creating a bed of hot coals that look like hot coals, but is in fact plastic coals with a light underneath and with smoke coming through between them, a few flames around, so it gives the impression that it's very, very hot, but without her getting burnt, so it's a safe fire.
You're hurt.
The Three-Eyed Raven is an important image from the books, and so we wanted it here, and we wanted it to look real. You know, it's not supposed to be surrealistic. It's not supposed to look like some strange monster. It's really just a raven with 3 eyes.
It started with Will Simpson, our excellent storyboarder and concept artist, who drew us a number of potential designs.
I think with all design stuff that there has to be a logic to working it out. It has to just look right. We have to buy into this as viewers. We've got to look at it and accept that this actually works, that it makes some kind of logical sense, that if an eye just pops out, where does it pop out and where does it make sense for it to be? Fantasy is so easy to get it wrong, and it's so easy to put things in just because you think, well, okay, let's do something so completely different. But in a lot of ways, the good stuff isn't so completely different, it's just slightly different.
It's very easy to write down Three-Eyed Raven in a script, but it takes somebody, in this case the VFX team, weeks and weeks and weeks of work to get it just right. And it sounds like it'd be kind of easy because you just take an eye and put it in the middle of the forehead, but actually to get that eye to sit properly in the raven's skull and to look like a real eye and to blink in the proper way and everything, it's an enormous amount of time. I tried to imagine what it would be like, not being able to walk and then suddenly having the freedom of being able to run at the speed of a horse. I think the spinning point of view shot was meant to look like what Bran was seeing, just to express his exhilaration and excitement.
Bran rides as a little pony belonging to friends of mine called Rupert. He's actually a rescue pony. Bran's saddle was designed by the art department, and they looked quite closely at sort of disabled saddles. We thought it looked too modern, so then the Devil's Horseman had the idea of using a military saddle, using it as the sort of basis and sort of just building a higher back.
The difficult thing with the saddle was, A, to look convincing that the Bran, without the use of his legs, is in a saddle that could appear to be realistic, but also in terms of the action on the day. The saddle had to be safe for the actor.
Quite a lot of it is off-screen, you know, that you don't really see the trainer sort of crouching down. So a lot of it is sort of a bit of make-believe.
We storyboarded the wildling attack scene just so everybody knew, how we wanted to look at everything and where we wanted them to be.
The enclosure area was easy accessible. We were very lucky for it. So it was a nice little open area in a forest.
This has actually been a blessing in disguise that they found an opening that we can just actually have a fight in.
Plenty of room for camera angles, plenty of room to get the horse in there.
We worked with the stuntmen a lot training before the fight because there's lots of factors to come into it. Things such as these cloaks.
I asked the guys, how do you get the wind to catch your cape like that? And they explained to me that our stunt coordinator taught them that you step and you kick the cape. And it kind of looks like it fills with air, and it just makes a nice big entrance.
What usually happens is we do it as trained stunt performers and fighters. It always looks a little bit too clean, so they always ask you to rough it up a little bit, which, in a sense, the actors do that on their own anyway.
Dan, the director, came and showed me what the stuntmen had come up with, what they'd planned for the scene based on the scripts.
These guys that are attacking Rob are a little bit, like, forest-oriented. They're not really trained soldiers.
I didn't want it to seem too choreographed. Although it had to be very carefully choreographed, so that it was safe and that everybody knew what they were doing.
There's always guidelines that they have in the script, or should I say points, what they want to see in the fight. Like Osher has to club Rob in the back. So we had to find a way of making Rob turn his back in a fight, because naturally you wouldn't do that.
There's a kind of clumsiness and an awkwardness to it that I think makes it feel real and exciting.
Drop the blade!
No, don't!
Do it!
So for Tion from the House of Greyjoy, we've basically made these the bow and arrow for him, incorporating his sigil, which is the inverted squid.
I've done a little bit of archery training because my character Theon is very good with the bow and arrow, a coward's weapon.
We wanted him to cross the stream and run into the scene, and drawing another arrow.
We had basically a little bit of archery practice with him, again, like say for an hour. He was actually very good. He was a bit nervous.
He was really worried that he wouldn't be able to do it, and then of course the moment we turned the cameras on, he did it as if he'd been doing it his whole life.
Originally it was all about posture and showing, just to make sure that he looks good, he's proficient, he's able to get his angle, his elbow up.
It's more kind of looking like you know what you're doing rather than actually knowing what you're doing.
And I'm yours. We'll keep her alive.
Gemma Jackson built the Sky Cell out in the parking lot of the paint hall.
You walk out of the paint hall and you're walking to your trailer and you see the Sky Cell there just in the middle of the parking lot.
It's grim and grimy and everything that a prison cell normally is, except it's also potentially lethal because it's open on one wall to a very sheer, like 2,000-foot drop-off, and the floor has a slope.
It was important for us to see water running down the channel in the middle of the cell because it's hard to actually read slope on film, but to see the water running, it would give you a sense that this was actually a fairly steep slope. There's graffiti in the back of the wall saying "Time to Die" that was written in some former prisoner's own blood. There's nowhere to go. Maybe you can pee off the side of the wall or something, but it's a pretty miserable place to live.
I mean, if you see a drawing of it, you can sort of, the original rendering of it was you had this sort of quite Byzantine-shaped ceiling of this place. Then there's other buildings sort of settling around it, where obviously I suppose they've got chambers and what have you. And then below it you can see these little tiny, where the cells are sort of stuck into the rock. But of course they also have to have close enough to the edge so you can fall over.
I was really impressed when the visual effects people gave us those plates and I got to see what was actually on the outside of the cell, which I thought was really, really beautiful and looked completely terrifying.
We had a lot of location photographs from various places in Greece that we used that gave us the sort of sheer drop that we needed, and there was a lot of matte painting work that went in to put the correct perspective in.
It's very, very hard to get a sense of scale and height when you're looking down, because a tree can be, a bush, or it can be a massive 50-foot tree. You don't know. So it's trying to get all those cues, which is why, again, all the low-lying cloud really helped to make you realise you're above the clouds and you're high.
It's just a kind of a constant process. You see it first, the most kind of primitive version, and then ultimately, ideally, it becomes photoreal, and you're not even aware that you're looking at an effect. It's just there's Tyrion in a sky cell in the middle of this castle, the Eyrie, which is thousands of feet up, and that looks like a horrible place to spend the night.
Board! Turnkey! Board! Board! Fall back, making noise! you like to be rich?
Go on, man, still making noise. My family is rich. We have gold, lots of gold. I'm prepared to give you lots of gold.
Now go!
Well, I don't have it here.
Now go!
Fuck off.
I don't want to practice today.
No.
They killed Jory.
The great thing about all of the sword training sequences with Arya and Syrio is that my job was pretty easy. I just had to focus on the acting.
We worked on elegance and style and the wit of someone like Syrio, because when he fights, it's sharp and surprising and always has an answer to someone's question.
I've never ever done sword fighting before, and Arya is left-handed, so that was pretty tricky. It was just completely different to anything else I've ever done before, and working with Miltos was great fun. It's just a laugh.
One of my favourite things I've witnessed is turning up on the first day when we were rehearsing our very first lesson, and her kind of, as boldly as can be, just turns up and goes, "So, am I doing it left-handed?"
I said, "Well, you're left-handed," and she said, "No, actually, I'm right-handed, but, you know, Arya in the books is left-handed, so I learned all the fight sequences left-handed."
I started off with a light one, and then they gave me a heavier one, and then they shaved it down nice and thin, so it's then to get a bit lighter, but still quite heavy. So I can really hit hard with it, not be scared to give it a good whack.
And there is only one thing we stick to death. Not today.
A lot of challenges to shooting the scene, not the least of which is simulating the arid Essos wasteland in a giant, very cold paint hall shed in Belfast.
The most grand interior is the one of the Dothraki Temple, which is like a huge woven structure with a fire pit in the middle.
A circular feeding seems to be appropriate for a temple and for the center of a city, a civilization.
The temple's a semicircular structure which is supported by a beautiful old carved wooden totem pole type design that Gemma's come up with, which looks really good.
They're made from plaster, so we sculpted first in clay to make sure we're happy with the shape, and then they're cast into molds, and so we can take various casts of plaster from there.
It's a very organic world. It's not as architecturally strong as the north or the south. It's mainly done with willow, with tree, with bamboo, with the floors are always mud, clay, compacted.
We sort of used some of the ideas of the marsh Arabs, had these kind of strange curve, but they're huge. I mean, they're much, much bigger than that.
The shape came together, and hence our lovely upside-down boat shape for the earth tents.
She has to read a whole heart. Hope that wasn't night walls. She's doing well. She'll never keep it down.
Today, we are shooting a scene where a ceremony is taking place in which Daenerys, my little sister, has to eat a fresh horse's heart.
Relatively early on in the process, we knew we kind of had to get out ahead of the challenge of designing a realistic-looking horse heart that was also an edible horse heart. Gordon, the prop master, had it made out of the gummy bear material. So it's basically a giant 3-pound gummy bear covered in fake sugar blood, which has the added attraction of drawing real flies.
It has to be something that you can actually eat, but also look as if it's something unpleasant and muscly, something that you really wouldn't want to put in your mouth.
When you looked into it, it was kind of almost foamy, but it was tougher than you thought. And then they had these, I think it was like dried pasta maybe, to sort of be the kind of the valves and stuff. So I really had something to chew on, kind of bite. And I mean, it looked very, very, very real.
I was super proud of her, because just being Amelia, she had to eat a gummy bear the size of a child's head all day long.
You don't just take one bite when you're shooting a scene like this. You take one bite and then another bite and then another bite.
Amelia is tiny. She would pick up this thing and it was about half her size. And it's a little bit like one of those challenges from one of the reality shows where the contestant has to eat something incredibly disgusting. In this case, she had to do it over and over and over again because the whole scene is about her eating this heart, and I don't know how many takes we shot.
When you're looking at someone eating a heart, there's kind of only one way to look, which is like, it's fascinatingly disgusting.
You see them sort of like, you know, give it a good coating of blood before you eat it, and I had a fair amount already on me, but yeah, as you're ripping into it, it really does go everywhere.
In the scene, it's a big question, will she vomit or will she not vomit? And that was a big question in reality as well. I think if we had one more take, it would have pushed her over the top.
The retch that you see there where she almost throws it back up is real.
She really was, you know, just barely holding all that gummy bear heart down. She was really disgusted by it.
She truly is a queen today.
The Dragon Eggs again was something that was going back and back and back, spending months with the artist, you know, looking over their concept art, and then when they started actually creating the concept eggs out of clay, just trying to get the scales to look right, trying to get the colors to look right when it was time for that.
They're made from plaster, so they can't be too fragile. They're fairly heavy actually in weight because of the material and being solid. But the actual finish itself is a kind of scalloped, carved finish, but the actual paint finish is quite flat on it.
We wanted them to have real heft. You know, often you see props and they don't seem right when actors pick them up. You can just tell they're too light. You can see that they're not straining. And our eggs are really heavy. You know, they each weigh about 20 pounds. You see poor Amelia kind of lugging them around, and she's tiny. And but that's great. They're supposed to be these massive objects that have turned to stone long ago because no one believes that dragons are ever going to come back.
You don't think I see you looking at my little sister? Don't think I know what you want? I don't care. You can have her. She can be queen of the savages and dine in the finest bloody horse parts, and you can dine on whichever parts of her you like. But let me go.
You can go. You can't have the eggs.
You swore an oath to me. Does loyalty mean nothing to you?
It means everything to me.
And yet here you stand.
And yet here I stand.
We always thought the Sky Cell was one of the more fun locations from the kind of awful, sadistic mind of George Martin, a way to torture prisoners without actually having to do much to them.
I think it's fun to have a scene where things don't work out for Tyrion, where he tries to use his silver tongue and it just gets him beaten down. There's just something kind of fun about seeing him fail.
He's very theatrical and grand. He likes these expressions. He has a couple phrases. A Lannister always pays his debts, and rich as Lannister. They're always money related.
I think Tyrion and Mord are a great opportunity for some humor. And Tyrion's such a self-aware person and sort of has such a great attitude that, you know, I think you're dying for him to come back because he's a lot of fun. And Mord was the perfect foil for him as the jailer.
Man, you know who the Lannisters are. I am a Lannister. Tyrion, son of Tywin. And of course, you have also heard the phrase, the Lannister always pays his debts. If you deliver a message from me to Lady Arryn, I will be in your debt. I will owe you gold. If you deliver the message, and I live, which I very much intend to do. What message? Tell her I wish to confess my crimes.
You wish to confess your crimes?
Yes, milady. I do, milady.
Sky cells always break them. Speak, imp. Meet your gods as an honest man.
Where do I begin, my lords and ladies?
To see the Eyrie set for the first time, you just realize how much work is being done on this show.
I was like, oh my god, did they build this for this scene?
I was dumbstruck when I first stepped into the paint hall and saw the Erie set.
I've never been involved in something that people have taken so much care to create and so much money spent. It's big.
It's a very large central hall. It's supposed to be situated in the middle of this impregnable alpine fortress.
The whole throne with the gnarly wood and the greys and it just all the kind of dusty feeling, the cold, the moon door. I mean, it was beyond my expectations.
It's almost beautifully gaudy in a way, like sort of matches what Erie should be.
It was really, really well thought through. Gemma pulled from all kinds of different sources from all over the map to come up with something that looks very organic and real, but also very different from anything else.
One of the big things about this series is we've tried not to set it in any particular period. I mean, it is way back in history, but we've never said when or what.
The Aaron sigil is the falcon and the moon. So birds are very important to them. They're up in the sky. The artwork tends to revolve around birds. So we brought in some really talented artisans who created these mosaics, mostly of birds in flight.
But the inspiration actually came from Santa Clemente in Rome, near the Colosseum, this little church. And it had the most beautiful dome ceiling. And it had this sort of feeling of infinity and space and birds flying. And the Erie is supposed to be way high up in the clouds. And I just like the idea of using birds and floating things and colours. And these murals, they were very much inspired by that.
There's this fantastic weirwood throne. A weirwood is the same kind of tree, that the white tree in the Godswood, the white tree with the red leaves and the face in it.
It's just this giant organic piece of wood that I think was actually 3 pieces of wood that were kind of sutured together.
And it's incredibly heavy. I mean, you have to get a crane to get it in and out of here, let alone move it. And I had sort of thought about painting it white, because the weirwood tree is white, but it didn't seem necessary. It's such lovely texture and the silver and everything.
It just looks twisted and crazy, and it's like the perfect throne for somebody who is twisted and crazy to be sitting in.
We have a staircase that's cantilevered out and rises around the space with the moon door at its centre, this kind of execution spot.
I like the circular, so this sort of infinity thing all the time happening. There was this whole thing about the fact it's supposed to be high up, and that if anybody is to fall out of here, they go through this door.
You see these 2 guys turning this giant wheel, and it would have been easy enough just to have 2 guys turning a wheel and you cut to the moon door open. There's no real reason why it had to be engineered so that the wheel opens the doors, but it does. The wheel opens the doors, so it was all very, very realistic.
Very well. My son will listen to whatever you have to say, and you will hear his judgment. Then you will leave, by one door or the other.
No need to bother Lord Robin. I demand a trial by combat.
You have that right.
My lady, I beg the honor. Let me be your champion.
The honor should be mine. For the love I bore your lord husband, let me avenge his death.
I'll fight for you, my lady. My honor.
Fly! Savardis, you're quiet. Did you want to avenge my husband?
With all my heart, my lady. But the imp is half my size. Shameful to slaughter such a man and call it justice. Agreed.
You demanded a trial by combat.
And I demand a champion. I have that right, same as you. My lady, I will gladly fight against champion for you. I wouldn't be too glad, sir. I name my brother, Jaime Lannister.
The Kingslayer is hundreds of miles from here.
Send a raven for him. I'm happy to wait.
The trial will be today.
Do I have a volunteer? Anyone? Anyone?
I think we can assume that no one is willing.
I'll stand for the dwarf.
More wine, Your Grace. We needed to show Robert out on the hunt to make sure it was clear in people's minds going into the next episode where Robert is and what he's doing.
In the first version of the script, you do see the board charging at Robert. That scene is not in the book. It happens off stage, as it were, in the book, and ultimately we decided we didn't want to see it, partly because it would have taken a full day to shoot, and partly just because it could have been unintentionally comical to have this big angry pig charging at our king.
We felt we could do something probably more interesting with the scene and really use the opportunity to situate Robert out there on the hunt, but really dig deeper into his relationship with his brother Renly, which in the long run proves, I think, a lot more important thing to understand than the board of it all. And also with Barristan, who's on the hunt with him. We just thought there was a lot of great character interplay between the 3 of them and the squire played by Eugene Simon. We thought that there's a 4 great actors, and they're 4 fun people to watch, and we just thought that it would be time much better spent getting to know them instead of spending all day to try to get a friendly wild pig to look less than friendly.
You might be my brother, but you're speaking to the king.
I suppose it was all rather heroic. If you were drunk enough and had some poor Riverlands horse shove your prick inside it and make that 8. More wine, Your Grace.
They burned most everything in the Riverlands. Our fields.
The first time I walked through the throne room was with Dan and David, the show creators, and they wanted to show off the sets to me. And I thought, oh my God, it's the size of a football field.
And as you come in, you go through some massive bronze doors. So as you open that, you reveal this beautiful throne room with marble floors throughout.
I went to the Pantheon, which is way pre-Christianity, and they've got this exquisite floor. That's sort of what the floor is based on.
There's 6 huge columns, which have got a verdigris bronze leaf detail climbing up the columns. And then all along one side, you've got some terrific stained glass windows that pour light in across the marble floor.
I wanted to try and make that feel incredibly sort of cathedral-esque, so we went very much for to feel it just goes on and on and on, and those pillars go up and up and up and up and up, and then those rather nice kind of friezes, I think, you know, with the hunting scenes, and that became a really lovely kind of signature to have throughout the Red Keep.
None your hand, the one who was leading them, taller by a foot than any man I've ever met, saw him cut the blacksmith in 2, saw him take the head off a horse with a single swing of his sword.
The Iron Throne is maybe the centermost prop in Westeros.
It's the throne that Aegon the Conqueror, who was the distant ancestor of Daenerys Targaryen, built.
He took all his enemy's swords and gathered them together and had his great dragon Balerion the Dread melt them down with its fiery breath.
It's a black, sharp, visual testament to his power.
Because the story is about the power and people fighting for power, and really what they're fighting for is the throne, and so we wanted to get it right.
Both Gemma and Gordon, the props master, and the great team of model makers created in successive stages something that started to look more and more like, you know, what the Iron Throne needed to look like.
Depending on how you light it, it can be ominous, it can look beautiful, it can look like a work of sculpture, it can look quite ugly and violent. It's supposed to have jagged edges. It's supposed to be the kind of thing that if you sit on it and you're not careful, you can poke yourself and actually bleed from some of the sword edges. So that's what we tried to accomplish, and I think the artist did a fantastic job creating a beautiful Iron Throne.
In the name of Robert of the House Baratheon, the first of his name, King of the Andals and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm, I charge you to bring the King's justice to the false knight Gregor Clegane and all those who shared in his crimes. I denounce him and attaint him. I strip him of all ranks and titles, of all lands and holdings, and sentence him to death.
My lord, this is a drastic action. It would be better to wait for King Robert's return.
Grand Maester Pycelle,
my lord.
Send a raven to Casterly Rock. Inform Tywin Lannister that he has been summoned to court to answer for the crimes of his bannermen. He will arrive within a fortnight or be branded an enemy of the crown and a traitor to the realm. A bold move, my lord, and admirable. But as it lies to yank the lion's tail, Tywin Lannister is the richest man in all the Seven Kingdoms. Gold wins wars, not soldiers. And how come Robert is king, and not Tywin Lannister?
The great thing about the fight sequence is that we kind of customized it to the set.
They actually constructed the set way before we even started working the fight out. So when we started working the fight out, we just went into the room, just had a look around everywhere.
It's a pretty involved fight. I mean, it's one of the longer man-to-man fights that we have.
The hardest thing to choreograph was a sword fight without any sword fighting in it, because he actually doesn't use any blocks or attacks or anything only until the last minute. So it was hard to go, well, he misses him here and he misses him there. He just runs around the moon hole or around the stairs, everywhere like that. It was interesting to choreograph a fight without fighting.
It was a really fun fight sequence to shoot because of that reason, because it was like a non-fight. Yet all the principals were really involved in it.
We wanted Savardis to be weighed down with his armour, so we had Bronn be very agile, very moving, like almost like play rope-a-dope to tire him out.
The set is big and involved and has a lot of, it has the colonnades and it has the staircases, and Paul and Buster did a great job of just working all those into the fight.
The script was pretty specific about what it was. What I tried to do was to make clear all the sight lines between our principals, so that Tyrion is keeping an eye on Lysa, Lysa is watching Tyrion, Catelyn is watching Tyrion, because really these people are fighting for them, so you want to feel invested in the fight somehow.
We're going to try and like get people dressed in around so that it's like the old schoolyard fight where the circle of people followed the fight.
It was a big round room. It was very large and had a lot of space. And what I tried to do was to put the background people as much in the way as possible and kind of make it as unconventional and messy as possible.
They use the staircase, and he uses the columns, and he uses everything to achieve his goal, which is namely to tire out this guy who's wearing big, heavy, clunky, safe armor until he can deliver the killing blows he needs to deliver.
Is it over?
You don't fight with honor.
No. He did.
Can I make the little man fly now?
This little man is going home. I believe you have something of mine. Lannister always pays his debts.
You wear your hair like a real southern lady now.
Well, why shouldn't I run the south?
It's important to remember where you come from. I'm not sure your mother would like these new styles.
My mother isn't from the north.
I'm aware of that.
What do you care? Do you even have hair under there?
Yes, I have hair.
I've never seen it.
Would you like to?
No. Where are you from anyway? The north or the south?
I come from a very small
Oh,
village,
wait. I just realized I don't care.
Sansa,
Scepter.
now you are being rude.
When we were preparing this scene, I had a meeting with Jack Gleeson, who plays the prince. His initial instinct was that Joffrey was disingenuous when he came to Sansa to give her this gift. But after talking about it, we kind of came to the realization that he's just a weak person. He's not a bad person. I mean, he may be bad in that he makes bad decisions, but he really wants to have a girlfriend. So we kind of came at it in that it really was a real romantic scene, and that Joffrey comes to Sansa to make amends, you know, for lying in front of the king and the queen, and for her wolf having been killed. As a result, it's very poignant. I think it shows another side of Joffrey before he goes and becomes completely corrupt and drunk with power.
You're my lady. One day we'll be married in the throne room. Lords and ladies from all over the Seven Kingdoms will come. From the Lost Earth in the north to the Salt Shore in the south. And you will be queen over all of them.
We tried to make this scene look as idealized and romantic and beautiful as possible. In doing that, you immediately create an expectation in the audience and that something's going to go wrong. I think anytime, you know, anyone at King's Landing starts to have a good time, you're waiting for something horrible to happen to them. So we tried to make it as beautiful and innocent and honest as possible.
What are you doing?
Going to King's Landing.
In a turnip cart?
I'll find a ship heading south in White Harbour.
You can afford that?
Some of my friends are more generous than others.
In that scene, you see a little bit more of a needy side to him, really. He tries to act the tough guy, and he is tough, and he knows what he's doing, but he needs some sort of love in his life because he doesn't really have it.
I think the main thing we realise is that Theon is actually quite lonely. You know, although he's got the Stark children, he's never going to be their equal. He's always going to be the outsider. And I think with Ros, he found a very unjudgmental, sympathetic ear. He obviously thinks there's a bit more going on there than there is. I think we actually realise that he's a lot more vulnerable than we necessarily see at other times.
Going to miss you!
I know!
I'm sending you both back to Winterfell.
What?
Listen.
What about Joffrey?
Are you dying because of your leg? Is that why you're sending us home?
What? No.
Please, Father, please don't.
You can't. I've got my lessons with Syrio. I'm finally getting good.
This isn't a punishment. I want you back in Winterfell for your own safety.
Can we take Syrio back with us?
Who cares about your stupid dancing teacher? I can't go. I'm supposed to marry Prince Joffrey. I love him, and I'm meant to be his queen and have his babies.
7 hells.
When you're old enough, I'll make you a match with someone who's worthy of you. Someone who's brave and gentle and strong.
I don't want someone brave and gentle and strong. I want him. He'll be the greatest king that ever was, a golden lion, and I'll give him sons with beautiful blonde hair.
The lion's not a sigil, idiot. He's a stag like his father.
He is not. He's nothing like that old drunk king.
Go on, let's get your scepter and stop packing your things.
Wait!
Come on!
But it's not fair!
We have a large book, which Ned Stark, one of the main characters, has to plough his way through. So we had to make that fairly dense-looking and ancient and unwelcoming.
The model maker made the covering for the book, and then our graphic artist Jim designed the actual pages.
It's a sort of a semi-medieval, an adaptation of medieval handwriting, something that I can do comfortably and quickly.
He also then, from the scripted pages, did the actual writing and drawings that went into the book, and did all the writing by hand to make it look obviously of the period.
I've got loads and loads of writing, which needs to be seen. I'm not going to copy it out of another book. So what does it say? We had to invent a lot of family histories for people that we never heard of. And that's it's in the book.
Where's my sister?
Stop him.
Where is she?
The great thing about this scene is that it was so well written and so neatly turned that when I read it, I couldn't believe how great it was.
The scenes that end each episode are always kind of the most important. This one in particular at the end of a whole arc.
The idea of Viserys coming back and challenging them and finally getting his crown.
You read it on the page, it's a big scene, we've got 2 days to film it, and it's Viserys' death, it's his crowning moment, but it's huge.
And then the idea of actually trying to figure out how to do that, I just thought, oh my God.
For a king.
You are no king.
Keep away from me.
Viserys, please.
There she is. Put the sword down. They'll kill us all.
They can't kill us. They can't shed blood in their sacred city. But I can. I want what I came for. I want the crown he promised me. He bought you, but he never paid for you.
The great thing is watching Emilia, or Daenerys' character, turn in that scene from her concern for her brother to the point where he threatens to kill her and her baby, to her removing herself from him and any sympathy for him.
If you watch her eyes in the scene, if you watch her face in the scene, you can see the place where a switch flips, and he's dead to her at that point.
What's he saying?
He says yes. You shall have a golden crown that men shall tremble to behold.
That was all I wanted. What was promised?
Kurumai. No! No! You cannot touch me! I am the dragon! I am the dragon! I want my crown!
This is another very challenging scene to shoot. It involves a fair number of people. It involves a relatively complex combination of stunts and of special effects.
Probably the most complicated has been the melting of the belt, I would say, because there's probably 4 different departments involved in it. It goes from costume initially designing the belt, the prop maker making a wax version of it, the special effects department then melting it on the day, and then the final result is from the prosthetic department, an actual physical piece that sits in the actor's head.
That sequence where he pours the gold over his head, we got one shot at that, and we were only ever going to have one shot at it. The great thing is that our special effects people came up with all of these different incredible tools.
It's quite complicated. We've spent some time and we've developed a liquid that we hope will look like liquid gold.
The thing we were probably most worried about was getting the gold that was dripping down his face to match with the gold's mask that had been created as a prosthetic to fit onto his face afterwards, because there's no real way to control the flow of the liquid when it's coming down.
And the most important thing for us is that it performs in the right way, so that it will land on the actor's head and not run all the way off, that it will sort of roughly form a cap.
It was kind of pure chance that it worked right. I mean, I think on the first take it just came down, and the way the gold dripped down matched, maybe not perfectly, but very close to how it ended up in the mask.
It's like the steam backpack on my back. So as soon as that touches, so you'll get the idea of the heat of it from real steam in the shot.
I think Harry did a great job with just imagining the kind of excruciating pain of actually being burned to death in that way.
And the final bit, the final shot, which is when you see him dead and the gold is almost solidified. So we've got this gold hat, basically, which has been moulded around my head, which fits all nicely over one eye, and it looks beautiful. And I've got 3rd-degree burn makeup all over my face. And then I'm sure they can add a little bit to make it look like it's still running and still the steam, and then they can just drop my body in, and that will be the final shot of Viserys.
I have to say, I don't think I've ever seen a death scene quite like it.
If you're going to go, do you know what I mean? You might as well get drowned in molten gold.
Look away, Khaleesi.
No.
Danny, tell them. Make them. No, you can't. Danny, please. A crown for king.
Khaleesi?
He is no dragon. Fire cannot kill a dragon.